What if the next chapter of the Dutton family story takes us to the moment when one of the most powerful men in Yellowstone history was still just a young boy trying to understand the brutal world around him? After seeing the struggles of the Dutton family across generations, fans are now waiting for the story that could reveal how John Dutton III became the man we knew. A new era is approaching, and this time, the year is 1969. The upcoming Yellowstone 1969 spin-off could finally show the hidden years that changed the Dutton family forever. We could see the final days of Spencer Dutton, the rise of John Dutton II, and the childhood of young John Dutton III before he became the legendary rancher we all remember. But the biggest question remains: who will appear in this story? What conflicts will destroy the family from within? And when will fans finally be able to watch this highly anticipated series? Today, we are breaking down everything we know about Yellowstone 1969, including the possible release date, the characters we might see, and the casting choices that could bring this unforgettable chapter of the Dutton legacy to life. Because this time, we are not just exploring the history of a ranch, we are exploring the birth of a legend. The Yellowstone universe has always been about more than just land. At its heart, it has been a story about family, sacrifice, loyalty, and the impossible choices people make to protect what belongs to them. From the early struggles of the Dutton family in 1883 to the dangerous battles shown in Yellowstone, every generation has faced its own war. But there is still one important chapter that fans have been waiting to discover. The year 1969 could become one of the most important moments in Dutton history, because this is the time when the future of the family was being shaped. This is the period when John Dutton III was still a young boy, long before he became the strong and fearless man played by Kevin Costner. It was the time when his beliefs, his fears, and his connection to the ranch were beginning to form. For years, fans have wondered what kind of childhood created someone like John Dutton III. How did he become a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for his family's land? Was he always destined to become that person, or did the struggles of his childhood force him to become stronger? Yellowstone 1969 has the opportunity to answer those questions. One of the biggest stories we could see is the relationship between John Dutton II and his son. Unlike previous generations, John Dutton II lived in a different world. The challenges were changing, the country was evolving, and running a ranch was becoming more difficult with every passing year. The old ways of the Dutton family were being tested by a modern world. This could create a fascinating father and son story, because John Dutton III would not simply inherit the ranch. He would inherit the responsibilities, the enemies, and the emotional weight that came with the Dutton name. Many fans believe that John Dutton II may have been a very different father compared to the man John Dutton III later became. While he may have loved his son, the pressure of protecting the ranch could have created distance between them. Young John may have grown up surrounded by land, horses, and tradition, but he might have also grown up feeling alone. And that loneliness could explain why the adult John Dutton became such a complicated character. He was a man who loved his family, but struggled to express his emotions. He protected his children, but often pushed them away. He valued loyalty above everything, even when it destroyed his personal relationships. A story set in 1969 could finally show where those qualities came from. But young John Dutton III would not be the only important character in this story. The final moments of previous Yellowstone universe stories left several clues about this time period. Spencer Dutton's journey, his connection to the ranch, and the future of his family could play a major role in the events of 1969. His decisions would continue, affecting the Dutton bloodline decades later. Spencer was a survivor. After everything he experienced, including war, loss, and heartbreak, his final years could reveal a completely different side of his character. Instead of being the young man searching for purpose, we could see an older Spencer trying to protect the future of his family. His presence in the story could create emotional moments because fans already know that every decision made by the older generation affects the people who come after them. Another major possibility is that Yellowstone 1969 could explore conflicts inside the Dutton family itself. The greatest threats have never only come from outside enemies. Many times, the biggest battles happened between family members. The Dutton name carries power, but it also carries pain. If different members of the family believe they have a right to control the future of the ranch, disagreements could quickly turn into a dangerous fight. The same themes that made Yellowstone so popular could return: inheritance, power, betrayal, and the question of who is truly worthy of carrying the Dutton legacy. And at the center of all of this is young John Dutton III. The boy we meet in 1969 could be completely different from the man fans know. We might see his curiosity, his dreams, and his early connection to ranch life. We might see the moments that slowly transform him into someone who believes the land is worth fighting for at any cost. Because before John Dutton became the protector of Yellowstone, he was just a young boy watching his family struggle to survive. And that story could become one of the most emotional chapters in the entire Yellowstone universe. But the story of Yellowstone 1969 is not only about the past. It is also about the future of the franchise, the actors who could bring these characters back to life, and the release plans that fans are desperately waiting for. And the casting choices could decide whether this new chapter becomes another unforgettable Dutton story. The biggest reason fans are excited about Yellowstone 1969 is not only because of the time period, but because of the characters who could finally receive the attention they deserve. Every great Dutton story has been built around powerful personalities, emotional struggles, and complicated family relationships. This new chapter has the chance to introduce younger versions of familiar names while also bringing back characters whose stories are not finished yet. At the center of everything will most likely be Spencer Dutton. Spencer has always been one of the most interesting members of the Dutton family because his life was completely different from the other generations. He was not just fighting for land, he was fighting his own personal battles. After experiencing the horrors of war, Spencer carried emotional scars that changed him forever. By 1969, Spencer would be much older, and fans could finally see what happened during the final years of his life. This would be a completely different version of the character. Instead of the young and fearless man who traveled across the world searching for purpose, we could see a man who has spent decades carrying the weight of the Dutton name. The most interesting part about Spencer's story is that his choices could directly affect the future of the ranch. Every generation of Duttons has made sacrifices to protect the land, and Spencer's final decisions could become one of the most important moments in the family's history. Many fans believe that Yellowstone 1969 could explore Spencer's relationship with the next generation. How did he prepare his family for the future? What lessons did he teach John Dutton II? Did he believe the ranch would survive? Or did he fear that everything the Duttons built could eventually disappear? These questions could create some of the most emotional moments in the series. But while Spencer's story would be important, the biggest focus could be on John Dutton II. John Dutton II is a character we know very little about, but his influence on the family is massive. He was the bridge between the older generation and the man who would eventually become the face of Yellowstone Ranch. Understanding him could completely change the way fans view John Dutton III. Unlike his son, John Dutton II lived during a time when the world was rapidly changing. The traditional ranch lifestyle was facing new challenges. Technology was growing, businesses were expanding, and families like the Duttons had to find new ways to survive. This means John Dutton II could be facing battles that are very different from previous generations. Instead of fighting only against enemies with guns and land disputes, he may have to fight against changing times. He could find himself trying to protect a family legacy while also preparing his son for a future that would become even more dangerous. His relationship with young John Dutton III could become one of the strongest emotional parts of the series. Fans already know the adult John Dutton was a complicated father. He loved his children deeply, but his dedication to the ranch often came first. Yellowstone 1969 could show where that mindset began. Maybe young John wanted more attention from his father. Maybe he wanted approval. Maybe he wanted to understand why the ranch always seemed more important than family moments. These small emotional conflicts could explain why John Dutton III became such a serious and determined man later in life. Another character who could bring a lot of drama into the story is Elizabeth. Her connection to the Dutton family has always been important because she represents another branch of the family tree. If she and her descendants return during this timeline, it could create new challenges for the ranch. The Dutton family has always been built on complicated relationships. Love, loyalty, and inheritance have always been connected. A character returning with a claim to the family's future could create tension that changes everything. Imagine a situation where John Dutton II believes he is protecting the ranch, but another member of the family believes they have an equal right to it. Suddenly, the biggest threat is not an outside enemy, it is a battle inside the Dutton bloodline. This type of conflict would fit perfectly into the Yellowstone universe. Because throughout the entire franchise, the most dangerous fights have often been personal. Another exciting possibility is seeing the younger versions of characters connected to the future of Montana. The Yellowstone universe has always included the history of Native American families and their connection to the land. A story set in 1969 could continue exploring those relationships and show another important period of change. The land has always been the center of every conflict. Different families have different histories with it, and each generation carries the memories of what happened before them. This is what makes Yellowstone stories so powerful. The land is not just property, it represents identity, family, and survival. When it comes to casting, fans are already imagining which actors could bring these characters to life. Casting will be one of the biggest challenges because these roles require actors who can show both strength and emotional depth. For Spencer Dutton, many fans would love to see a familiar face return. Seeing the character again, even as an older version, could create a strong connection between the previous stories and this new chapter. For John Dutton II, the role would require an actor who can show responsibility, toughness, and the pressure of carrying the family name. This character would need someone who can portray a man caught between protecting the past and preparing for the future. And for young John Dutton III, the casting choice could be the most important of all. The actor would need to show the beginning of a legend. He would need to portray a child who is still innocent, but slowly learning that the world is not always fair. The audience would need to believe that this young boy could eventually become the man fans know. Because the journey from a young ranch boy to one of television's most memorable characters is the heart of Yellowstone 1969. But the biggest mystery still remains. When will fans actually get to see this story unfold, and which actors will officially join the Dutton family? The answers could determine the future of the entire Yellowstone universe. The success of any Yellowstone story has always depended on one important thing: the actors who bring the Dutton family to life. The characters are powerful because the performances make their struggles feel real. Every look, every conversation, and every difficult choice adds another layer to the family's complicated history. That is why the casting for Yellowstone 1969 could become one of the biggest discussions among fans. This series would not only need actors who look similar to the characters we already know. It would need performers who understand the emotional weight of the Dutton name. They would need to show characters who are strong on the outside, but carrying years of pain and responsibility inside. The first major question is whether Spencer Dutton could return. Spencer became a fan-favorite character because his story was filled with courage, heartbreak, and survival. His journey was different from other Dutton men because he was not born wanting power. He was a man searching for peace after experiencing things that changed him forever. If Yellowstone 1969 explores Spencer's final years, the role would require an actor capable of showing both the strength of a Dutton and the sadness of someone who has lost so much. Many fans would love to see Brandon Sklenar return as Spencer Dutton. His performance already gave audiences a strong connection to the character, and seeing him portray an older Spencer through aging makeup could create a powerful connection between generations. Of course, the series could also choose an older actor to represent Spencer during this stage of his life. This could allow the story to show a completely different side of the character. A more experienced performer could bring the feeling of a man who has lived through decades of struggles and now has to think about the future of his family. No matter which direction the creators choose, Spencer's presence would likely be one of the emotional foundations of Yellowstone 1969. But perhaps the most important casting decision will be young John Dutton III. This character is not just another member of the family, he is the beginning of one of the most iconic figures in the Yellowstone universe. Fans already know the adult John Dutton as a determined rancher who would do anything to protect his land. But seeing him as a child could completely change how audiences understand him. The actor chosen for young John would need to show many different emotions. He would need to show innocence, curiosity, and the excitement of growing up on a ranch. But he would also need to show the loneliness and pressure that could shape him into the man he becomes. The challenge is not simply finding a child actor who looks the part. The challenge is finding someone who can make viewers believe they are watching the beginning of a legend. A great young John Dutton would need to show moments where we see the future version of him hidden inside the child. Maybe he is already fascinated by the ranch. Maybe he watches his father closely and learns from every decision. Maybe he begins to understand that the Dutton name is both a gift and a burden. These small details could make his character journey unforgettable. Another important character who could appear is John Dutton II. Since this character has remained mostly mysterious, the actor chosen for this role would have the opportunity to create something new. John Dutton II would need to represent a different kind of Dutton strength. He would not be exactly like James Dutton from 1883 or John Dutton III from Yellowstone. He would be someone caught between two worlds. He would have the traditions passed down from previous generations, but he would also be facing a modern era where old methods were becoming harder to maintain. The actor would need to show a man who understands responsibility, someone who carries the pressure of protecting thousands of acres while raising the next generation of Duttons. His relationship with young John could become one of the most important parts of the series. Many fans have wondered if John Dutton III became distant because of the way he was raised. Yellowstone 1969 could finally explore those emotional roots. Did John Dutton II teach his son strength but forget to show affection? Did the responsibility of the ranch prevent him from being the father young John needed? These questions could create a powerful family drama. Along with the Dutton family, the series could also introduce characters connected to the larger history of Montana. The Yellowstone universe has always shown that the story of the land belongs to many people, not just one family. Because of this, Yellowstone 1969 could continue exploring the relationships between the Duttons and other families connected to the region. The casting of these characters would also be important because they could bring new perspectives into the story. Every generation has its own struggles, and every family has its own connection to the land. Another exciting possibility is seeing familiar actors return in new ways. The Yellowstone universe has already shown that audiences love seeing connections between different time periods. Characters from previous shows have helped expand the story and make the world feel much larger. A few familiar faces could make Yellowstone 1969 feel like a true continuation of the Dutton legacy rather than just another spin-off. However, the biggest question remains: how much of the story will focus on the past, and how much will it connect to the future? Will Yellowstone 1969 mainly focus on Spencer's final years? Will it focus on John Dutton II building the future of the ranch? Or will the entire story revolve around young John Dutton III discovering what it truly means to carry the Dutton name? The answer could make this one of the most emotional chapters in the franchise. But before fans can experience this new era, there is another mystery that everyone wants to know. When will Yellowstone 1969 finally arrive, and what can we expect from its release plans? Because the wait for the next Dutton story may become one of the biggest conversations among Yellowstone fans.